Now, when we think about young boys, we sometimes forget that they're learning from us, adults, in regards to how they should behave. Now, in today's show, we're going to be looking at emotions that come from the learned element of parents, teachers to young. Hi, this is Joey Buzzattle, and welcome to the Secret Men's Business Podcast. On today's show, we're going to go all the way to WA. We're going to be speaking to Josh Langley, who's going to be telling us about emotions and how young boys can actually learn to be more emotionally connected. Josh, how are you?
I'm good, Joe, and thank you so much for having me on.
No, thank you. I know that we were talking before about the duration of us getting together, so I really appreciate your patience and you sticking with me and finally coming on. So thanks for doing that. So before we start, do you want to just tell our audience a little bit about your background?
Okay, well, I about 8 years ago, I wrote a book called Being You Is Enough. And when I wrote that book, because I wrote it for my 8-year-old self, and I didn't realize the impact that would have, A, on me, and B, on everyone else, including kids. So this book, Being You Is Enough, went out into the world, and it connected so deeply with all these kids, because it was all the things that I wanted to go back and say to my 8-year-old self about life that I know now. And it was basically the 11 most important things that a kid should know. And that really resonated. And that sort of opened up all these doors and opportunities to me to write an actual 4-book series and then create online programs to go into schools, to talk to kids about emotional regulation, about, noticing your thoughts, all that sort of stuff, and self-esteem, and self-acceptance, those sort of messages. And so it started from that one little book, Being You Is Enough, and now I've almost created an enterprise.
I can see them behind you. Are they all your books?
Yeah, they're the books there.
So was there a particular event for you to write that book, that first book? Like, did something happen to you personally that made you decide to do that, or was it more just a feeling based on children around you, or?
It was one of these things. Was a culmination of a couple of things. I'd already written a couple of books before that. They were illustrated books, but they were for adults. And my publisher was moving into the children's book field, and they said, "We would like you to do a children's book." And I originally went, "No, I can't do this," because I don't have kids myself, Joe. So I'm going, I don't have any experience. I'm not an educator. What qualifications can I bring to writing a children's book? And then something dawned on me. Why don't I write that book for my 8-year-old self? Because my 8-year-old self had suffered a lot of childhood trauma growing up. And it was sort of this light bulb moment when something just feels right, and it felt so right to write this book and to give my younger self all the support and help, that love, all that he needed. So much so that the last page of the book, of the most important things a kid should know, was that you were loved.
Yeah.
And that's the one that really resonates with parents, especially mums, because they go, "Oh, this is what I wanted to read when I was a kid, and I want my child to have that." So, so it's like a mixture of different elements that came together. The universe just came together to create the opportunity.
I mean, in therapy, we do a lot of inner child work, and it's really good to have that perspective, I guess, for young kids to read so they can understand, because really all our trauma in a way gets born in childhood in a way. Like, so I know you said you don't have children, neither do I, but obviously you have a connection to what's going on with young boys, to become, men. So what do you understand? What's the most difficult thing for a young boy to experience that causes them to have an emotional disconnection, like from your research and experience? What are some of the things?
Okay, look, there are several things. There's the current, obviously, modelling of behaviour from their own fathers, which is I'm going to applaud dads around the world right now. They are so making a huge effort to turn up and show up for their kids, both physically and emotionally, and doing that, which is great. But there's still a lot of the old ideals, as you would know, Joe, is like men don't talk about their emotions, they don't express them, they harden up, and you've got to be tough and all that sort of stuff. That is still very prevalent, and so kids see that and they model that behaviour, and as we know, that's extremely damaging. Plus, also in society, in the media, that's portrayed is this male sort of I'm strong, I'm the hero, I will go and rescue everyone, but I won't rescue myself, even though I must be dying on the inside. That sort of mentality, and this idea of I'm going to be strong, muscular. All these societal expectations, they're still there, and they're still just as strong as ever. And especially with kids doing a lot of gaming, and
Right. I didn't think of that.
Primary school kids, they're all doing gaming, and especially if they're playing things like Fortnite or these shoot 'em up games, and really, it's not teaching them empathy. It's not teaching them how to understand themselves or anything like that. So you've got that on one side, society on the other side, and then the parental thing in the middle. And where do these kids learn that they need to express their emotions? They need to talk about what's going on in their heart and their mind, so they can actually have a balance of all their emotions when they get older, and not be so screwed up.
I never thought of gaming. I mean, it's interesting. Like, we're in 2022 and we're still stereotyping behaviors. Like, you and I were talking before we went live. Like, I'm from an ethnic family, and it's like this taboo if I go into the kitchen, right? Even though it's current time. Like, so do you think stereotypes are sometimes not purposefully inflicted?
Oh yeah, they're just subconscious. With that, a lot of parents would carry stuff from their own childhood and from their grandparents' thing. It just becomes when you don't question it and you don't stop and think, what am I doing? How am I doing it? And why am I doing it? You just keep perpetuating the same things, and especially culturally, it's. I mean, obviously, with your background, you would know that culture plays a huge role. That even the mum would say, "Get out of the kitchen. This is my domain."
Yeah.
You're just going to ruin everything. That sort of thing. So, but I think we're seeing a change in that now. I know we're seeing that, where a lot of parents are wanting to be inclusive. They want to be. They're bringing their kids into areas where otherwise, go back to our generation, Joe, and we're like, you get out of the kitchen. We don't want you here. That sort of thing. Or your only duties are to clean up the leaves in the street, or you can go, you can vacuum. You're going to do all those.
Well, we didn't really have a lot of echoes coming in from the outside in a way. Like, we knew boys did this and girls did that. I think nowadays it's probably even more confusing. I mean, what I was thinking about, where I think it's still prominent, it's in sport. That whole, when kids start playing sport, and this whole thing about, coaches still telling, get out there and do, come on, suck it up and all that. That message is still being portrayed, even though we've got more girls playing sport now, even though, nowadays toys are now becoming gender fluid and all that sort of stuff is happening. But, one of the things that I remember myself is I remember being told not to cry.
Oh, yeah.
Boys don't cry, right? So do you ever, what do you feel would be a way for parents to start to change that behaviour in themselves?
I think for them that's the big question, because seeing as kids model the behaviour, they've got to see it in their parents. So their parents have to be willing to be emotionally fragile. That's the wrong word to use, because fragile sounds like it's
vulnerable.
Bad.
Vulnerable.
I mean, even though the word vulnerable now is a bit of a catch cry, which is good. I suppose it's they can be willing to open up and talk. So even if dad is willing to talk about how he's feeling about something, is that first little step, instead of it's all, sport, watching the footy on the telly, doing all that sort of stuff, and then just talking about things as opposed to about how he feels about things. I think when he talks about how he feels about things, as opposed to, no, I'm not talking, I just got really pissed off at so-and-so. It's like, how did he feel affected on the inside? Yeah. And his son can relate to that. Oh, my dad feels things that I do. Wow. Okay. I'm not alone in what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling.
Yeah. So you're saying that creates the bridge to normalizing emotion. Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's the main reason why I started this podcast and the Secret Men's Business group, because of a lot of my friends were at one point 15 years ago, there was 3 people that committed suicide in the same week. And so I thought, this is like, we need to start talking and all that sort of stuff. You mentioned resilience in your little bio that I read. Like, can you define what that is? Because I think a lot of people feel a bit confused, and I always hear the word, oh, if I'm emotional, I'm weak, or if I'm this, I'm weaker than I should be. So, what is resilience because I really do think that you're going to probably say that the weak and the strong are seen as equal in a way, aren't they?
Well, yeah, for me, I look at the, instead of just the overarching idea of resilience, even though I use it quite often, it's the little things. It's like, when have I stuffed up? Okay, if I stuff up, how can I see the opportunity in that? Or how can I learn from that? So it's a little mistake. Okay, instead of looking at it like everything's all bad and I overthink it. Because I know a lot of kids are really getting stressed and overthinking a lot of stuff and getting more anxious than they ever were 20 years ago.
For sure.
So how can they reframe a small little mistake to go, okay, well, maybe I won't do that. Maybe I'll do it differently next time because I am a human being. We're all human beings. We all make mistakes. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. So reframing it that way. And things like failing. When you fail something, like you don't get picked for a team or you fail a test or, instead of that's the end of the world, what opportunities can come out of that? How can you, instead of awfulizing it, go, okay, what can we do here? And it's giving kids the mental tools to be able to go, what can I do? And look, it starts with things like mindfulness as well.
And it also tells them that they're okay.
Well, that's the other thing. That's another part of the coin. It's giving them a whole suite of skills, I guess, is that we didn't get when we were growing up. And that's one of the things that I wish I could go back and give my 8-year-old self the ability to go, hey, Josh, little Josh, you're amazing just the way you are. You're fantastic. You are beautiful. You are loved. Now, one of the things that will be really beneficial if you could actually notice your thoughts. So you could pick the bad ones when they go, oh, I'm useless, I'm dumb. Then you go, well, is that beneficial? Well, maybe I could change the thought. Maybe I could think of something different. So therefore, you're giving the kids skills, little skills to use that they can implement, which creates the overall resilience. Yeah.
I mean, one thing that you mentioned about they don't know what to do. I think, as a therapist, that's one of the biggest things I've noticed. Like I never used to see kids before COVID, and now all of a sudden I'm seeing a lot more with anxiety. And I think that, I really think that we were lucky in a way because my parents used to say, go out, and we'd go out and play till 7 o'clock at night, which taught us how to deal with, I guess, things, right? Well, I think this generation, they were helicoptered, they were protected, and then when COVID hit, they didn't know what to do, right? They weren't sure what to say or what to do to themselves.
Yes, you've hit the nail on the head there because I've got to be careful with talking about parents in this generation, because the Generation Y parents and some of them are Generation X parents. But it is that I want to create a better situation for my kid than I have. And a lot of that is the perception that the world's a dangerous place. I need to protect my child. And that's comes smack bang in the middle of digital technology with phones, tablets and all that. So it's easier for a kid to sit at home on their phone or a tablet than it is to go send them down the park to go play.
Yeah.
Because they're more likely to want to do that. And parents go, okay, I can see my child, they're in the house, they're not going to get abducted by some person down the road. But that's a misconception that's out there now, that the media has.
It's taken over in a way, isn't it? It's become a big...
It is. And there's this whole culture of fear that look, bless parents' hearts now, because it's such a big role that they have to play, and it's such a complicated one. You would see yourself.
I totally. I would probably. I would hate to be a parent.
Yeah, and it's like, but it's like I see the effect, and as you said, you see the effect of what's happening with kids is that they haven't been given the life skills. So as you said, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we would go out in the street. All the kids in the street will meet up. We'll play cricket. We'll play chasey. We'll all that. We'll invent games. We're all by ourselves. So we had to learn the idea of getting on with each other. We had to learn the idea of negotiation. We had to learn the idea of using your imagination to come up with ideas. You had to learn all that, how to deal with rejection. If they said, oh, you're not playing with us, oh, well, you've got to learn that,
Yeah.
So you had to learn it yourself. And then when you are able to have that agency, you're able to then deeply intrinsically know it and then learn from that. Whereas now they're at home, they've got organised play dates, which are sort of not monitored, but it's like
it's very structured in a way, isn't it?
Very structured, so there's no randomness that's happening, and that's one of the things that I really wanted to approach, because I've got a new kids book coming out in August, and it's called How to Be a Wonder Hunter, and it's getting kids back outside, interacting with the natural environment, interacting with your imagination, being mindful, what can they notice, what can they see, what they can feel, all that sort of stuff. getting them to then suddenly realize it's not all just tablets, not all just safety, and I'm hoping that it'll be backed up by parents from the book.
Yeah.
Too.
Do you think with social media and with phones that what you're sort of suggesting, which I totally love, do you think that it's going to be difficult, or do you think that it's going to be something that they will embrace? Because I think, I'll give you an example. Like my nephew and my niece come over, and they communicate with each other through text, and they're in the same room. Right? Yeah. So do you think that there is going to be, are people, especially parents, becoming more aware that we need to get them out doing things again? Do you know what I mean? Like, or is it going to be a resistance?
I think there will be a resistance, but I think it'll be a natural sort of emerging out from under the devices. Because I know that this generation, like say Generation Alpha, the 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, they literally are born with a tablet in their hand. And that's their language. That's how they communicate. And you can't change that.
That's
what it is.
Well, it is what it is, yeah.
So you've got to learn to balance that. So, but when they look at their mum and dad, who sitting there scrolling through Facebook all day long as well, they're going, well, if it's all right for them, it's all right for me.
Yes.
And so it has to be a top-down approach. It's like the parents go, okay, come, let's down tools, let's go to the park.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's take the dog for a walk, and let's not bring the phone.
And like I think that a lot of parents are afraid to introduce time limits. Like a lot of parents that I coach, I just say, well, you got the power, you can flick the Wi-Fi off, right? But they all go, oh, I can't do that. It's like, I try to teach them that, half an hour to an hour a day is a lot. And when they tell me their kids are on there for 5 hours, I sort of say, well, you got to be mindful of what that causes. On the other side of that, a lot of parents don't realize that they're anxious and their kids are becoming anxious because of them. So I think there's a lot of awareness that needs to take place. Do you agree?
I think, yes. I think it's easy for parents to not be aware because there's so much going on in their lives.
Yeah,
and it's like when they stop, and it's like, and they're constantly worried about their kids because and the whole idea of social media, especially, and even though most of the kids are on these chat things, Snapchat and all that sort of stuff, or they're chatting through their games like Roblox or Fortnite or whatever. That's another way they communicate with friends. They don't want to miss out on a message that comes in at midnight. So if when your parent says, "I'll switch that off," or "I'm going to switch off the Wi-Fi," that kid is up against forces that they have no control over because some multinational giant corporation goes, we want people spending more time on their screen. So we're going to put things in place. They're going to demand your attention. And so therefore that kid, you know what it's like when you're a kid. You don't want to be ostracized. You don't want to be out of the group. You don't want to miss a message.
Yeah.
So if your friends in your group are going to message you at 8 o'clock at night, you want to be there to get that. But when parents are there going, no, let's put a boundary in, but then the kid reacts and then the parent goes, I don't want to be disliked by my child.
Yeah.
Or I find it very hard to put boundaries in place because it's like, it's that crossover between this my child and my friend, or am I their parent?
Yeah. Can you see or can you share some of the consequences of that if it's not handled properly? Like, for example, is some of the behaviours that they might do at school. Like I know some kids that don't want to go to school. So because the listeners on this podcast will be old enough to have children. So or what would be some of the consequences if we don't address it?
This is an example by a lady, Claire Eaton. She's a specialist for mental health for high schoolers. And she tells me that she sees kids who are maybe 14, 15, and they have got so much anxiety they can't even go to McDonald's to put an order in.
Yeah.
Because they've done everything online. They've used their tablet for whatever reason, for everything.
Oh, gosh.
So when it comes to actually talking face-to-face with someone, the anxiety hits. I don't know. I don't know how to read faces. I don't recognize emotions, what's going to happen. So they are filled with anxiety about even ordering a coffee or ordering snackers.
Yeah. I mean, imagine when the what do you call it? The virtual reality stuff comes in. They're going to be like at home. They're going to be like at home more. So it is a little bit.
Can I tell you, Facebook is already road testing it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like I think what you said earlier about the corporations. I think it's funny. I saw this thing with adults doing a piece on artwork, right? And they went into a beautiful gallery in London. and then were given the goggles, and when they had to take them off, they preferred to keep them on. See, so that's how I think, that's how intense it's going to be, where if you had a choice between going outside or staying at home and playing the games that you are talking about, I think there's going to be, I think that the message that you're trying to pass on has to be really directed to the parents, because if the kids get control of that, and because they're trying to get us to be on there more. That's the point. Like they want us to be in that virtual world more, to spend more money or spend more whatever. So
exactly.
it's hard to try and stop progress when it's so shiny and so different and
it's so powerful. But I think as long as there are options and you can balance it out, I think we'll be okay. I mean, look, I certainly think that I'm excited by the future, because the way the future's going with kids having to think differently, be more creative, be more resilient, all that, because all the jobs that you and I have got now aren't going to be around. They're going to be AI and automation and all that. It's going to be doing that for us. So these kids are going to be more creative and more inventive, and you're going to have more neurodiverse kids stepping up and having a bigger role to play.
Totally.
In creation, which I'm looking forward to. And
but aren't you glad that we're a bit older and we have to go through it? I mean, like, in a way, I'm sort of a bit glad that I don't have to, because I do think I know that every generation, I remember when I was young and we had records and we had things that our parents didn't know. So I get it. This is that for us. But in a way, I do think that it's bigger. It's much bigger than what we went through.
It's way bigger. I wouldn't want to be a kid or a parent for anything these days, because there's so many external forces.
Yeah.
And but that's why it's even more important that we give kids these resources, or especially from my perspective, I'm giving core basic resources, empathy, whether it's resilience, emotional learning, all that sort of stuff, the importance of creativity. Give them that foundation of that's what's really important. It's not getting good scores in uni or school or anything like that. It's not being the best sports player.
It's sort of like saying it's going back to values.
It's kind of values. Yes, I would say values that are universal values to everyone.
Yeah,
it's not just values related to a religion or something like that, but they're human. Human values.
Okay. Can I ask you, what do you feel is the difference between a boy and a girl then? Like what's the difference with the way that they're?
I know that it depends on who you speak to. A lot of people are experts in the field. I'm not an expert, but they would go obviously physiology and mental development. Girls develop faster than boys, and yes, that's true. But I've heard that you can't teach boys emotional regulation or development from an early age until later on. And I reckon. Why does that stop you from trying? Keep trying.
So do you think it's not true?
I don't think it's true. I think you can. I think you
can. Because I really honestly think that I was taught emotional resilience. I mean, I was the first child of a big family, and because of being first, I got this different element of attention, and I was looked after by my grandma, my auntie. So I got a lot of the feminine element, which made me emotional. Yeah. Versus when I look at my brother, who didn't get that, right? So,
okay, yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, I think as more babies came in my family, people became less interested because they had to go to work and all that. So, I felt like I was lucky, right? Because mum didn't work, but then things started changing. Like both parents started working, and I think that's a big thing when you have a female connection, and then all of a sudden she's at work. Right? You don't really necessarily learn those things. I mean, that's my observation. And even like nowadays, like kids go to childcare at birth. Do you know what I mean? All of that stuff would influence all of this, wouldn't it?
I don't know. I don't know what the research is on that. But you can. I suppose you can have a look at what do you think? And I go, well, see, for me, I was my mum had some mental health issues, so the nurturing wasn't there in those first few years of life, and then I was put in daycare and childcare and all that sort of stuff. So I didn't have that core nurturing aspect that the whole attachment theory. I ended up having disorganized attachment, but that didn't stop me in the end from learning about emotional regulation, learning to understand my emotions. But I came to it in a completely different way.
How was that?
I studied Buddhism for a long time and mindfulness.
Wow. Yes, okay. So that's good. That's good for listeners to know that, because most of the times people think it comes from a crisis, right? But most people can find it like through seeking, Do you think that that's the message that's being sort of taken out now, is for men to go seek it?
I think men do. I think men have to realise that they actually are important. And I know that sounds a really strange thing to say. Men are always willing to go, I'm important because I'm a man. But it should be, I'm important because I'm a human being.
Yeah.
And human beings come with emotions, and human beings come with everything. Women have the same emotions as men. We just have different ways of getting in touch with them, expressing them. And the more men can actually learn to be in touch with what their inner world is doing and what their inner world is saying, the happier that they are, and the more able they're going to be able to contribute in a positive way.
Yes. I mean, what do you think the top two, I mean, this is just your opinion, what are the two things that men have still carried over and they're still behaving in, even though we've got this dialogue, even though they know a bit more? What are the two behaviours that you think men are still showing that they really should have changed by now?
Of the breadwinner, I've got to be the breadwinner. I know that for myself. Right. I'm in a same-sex relationship, and we've got two men that have to be the breadwinners. And when one's not, I still feel I am not.
So you feel that you need to be providing.
Yes, and providing in a monetary sense.
Yeah.
And I've got to be the main breadwinner of the family.
Okay.
And when you got the other person saying the exact same thing, you would think it would be wealthy, but it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Well, do you know for yourself when you wrote that book? Do you know where you got that from? Like, was that your dad's message to you?
I think it was my dad's message, even though both my parents were working professionals. But I think it's a thing that everyone. It is a thing from generational, where if you didn't work hard, you weren't achieving. You were just being lazy, and that whole stupid mindset of I still carry that to this day. Even if I've got enough work to last me forever, but I want to take a day off, I still think I'm not achieving much. I'm still being lazy.
Okay.
That's a thing that I think a lot of men still carry. When and it's this idea of it, because I'm a man, I mean not entitled, but because this is my space, no one else can have it. Yeah. And I will not understand anyone else.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think that's probably the biggest one, isn't it? That I don't think a lot of guys realise that they're doing things that are seen as racist or homophobic or sexist. They don't realise that. That's the thing. I think it's the realisation. I think that they've got good intention, but they just don't realise the entitlement that comes with. One of the biggest examples was Black Lives Matters, and then a lot of white men were saying, "But all lives matter," but they lost the point of what that really meant, right? And so I still think we've got a bit of a distance to go. But I mean, if we can start teaching boys through your books and through the message, so tell us a bit more about your books. Like, tell us a little bit about how people can get in contact or where they can buy them.
Well, they can buy them through me. I do signed copies through my website, or they're available in all good bookshops around Australia.
Are they on Amazon?
Amazon. Yep.
I'll make sure that I put all the links on there. So, is there an age group, or can anyone read them?
Well, anyone can read them, but usually they're designed for 4 to 12-year-olds, and that's why I developed my Inspiring Kids program to be a companion to the books. So the whole idea is the program features me talking to kids about the subjects that are in the book, especially, about feelings, and, what you do with anxious feelings, what you do when you're angry. So I see so many, you would see it too, Joe, or like interviews with the people who have been sex offenders or criminals or whatever. And they all say, the one thing I wish I learned as a child was it was okay to express my emotions or how to deal with my. And that's one of the things that are really important that I really stress. I try and teach all the time.
Last question. If you could, I guess, because you've got such a vast amount of content, really, what is one topic that you would love to cover that you haven't thought of or haven't touched yet? Like with kids, what would be something that you think, and maybe you haven't gone there yet because it's not the right time, but, this is between us, I guess, like what is that I know that sex was a really big one, but now a lot of people have written books about that. Is there anything in particular that you think there is still a bit of a hold on that?
I think one of the things I've been slowly moving my mind towards this because I've had a lot of parents, or a few parents go, Josh, you need to write a book about this or that, or whatever. And one of them was about consent.
Right.
And body awareness and consent. And to me, I got no idea how I would do that. What would that look like as a Josh Langley kids book?
Well, it starts off, I saw something about that. It starts off with just even looking at the playground, right? And when someone takes over a particular toy or a particular space without asking, and, boys, I mean, I know myself, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I was expelled from kindergarten because of that. I know. Like, I didn't understand consent at that young age, and I caused a lot of trouble with wanting to play with everything. So I think that, it's just really just getting them to talk about saying yes and no and listening to what that means. I mean, I think that is a big one.
Yeah, and understanding personal boundaries.
Yeah.
That sort of, some people say kids, they're too young to learn that, but I don't.
Kids aren't dumb, are they? Kids are smart.
No. Oh, yeah, and they're a lot smarter these days than they were when we were.
I know.
I know.
It scares me. What about the sex, the trans community and the fluidity? Is that being covered? Like, kids learn, or is that one of those taboo subjects that parents are saying no, they're too young?
Because
kids nowadays are young, aren't they? Becoming trans.
Well, I think what's happening is you got two things happening. Firstly, for centuries you have got people who have grown up in bodies that they feel they're not theirs. They just go, I'm in the wrong body, and they're so traumatized. They get to be an adult and they're still traumatized. But you get some people that know from the age of 4 or 5 they're in the wrong body, but they don't know how to express it. They don't know how to say it. They don't have the vocabulary, and they don't have the safe space to be able to talk about it. So what's happening now is hopefully we're creating a safer place for kids to be able to, if they want to, like when they get to be 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, or whatever, that they can then go, well, maybe this is okay if I feel this way.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, you would have heard about that school though. That's like I totally agree with you. But then I don't know if you heard about that school in Sydney. That all the parents had to sign a document to say that if so we've got this sort of like world wanting to catch up, and then we've got these silly establishments to try and control.
I know, and you're always going to have that though, Joe. And I
know, but don't you wish for a day?
Less and less.
I just wish for the day that we just all, like you said, that human word. If we can just all say that we're human, it doesn't really matter what people do because it's no one's business really. But it's like I feel like there's so many people that want to tell you how to be, and that is a big part of this topic. If there's a father that's stoic, then he's going to want his son to be stoic.
Yeah.
And if his son is creative and wants to be more,
sensitive.
Yeah, sensitive or use his hands rather than play sport, there needs to be that I agree with you, it is changing, but maybe in my circles, in my suburb, it's still a little bit more way to go. So, Josh, thank you so much for talking to us. You know what I love about this is that it's the same topic or the same information, but it comes from a different place. And so I think people listening to this podcast will hear the same message, even though we're talking about a totally different subject. And hopefully guys will start realizing it's actually not complicated because the same things are being passed on each time we talk.
Yes.
Which I believe Buddhism is the core of all mental health solutions.
Yeah.
Really, don't you think?
The philosophy of Buddhism is so just straightforward, simple, logical, common sense, and that's I actually create my baseline, my bullshit detector of everything is based. Hopefully, I can swear on the show. Of course, is based on the Buddhist philosophy. Yeah, not the religiosity, but the philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, like again, it's not. I think mental health sometimes can be complicated. But really, it's just getting people to surrender and to observe themselves. And it is simple, really. I mean, it took me a while to get it. Once I went through some stuff, I got it, and I read a Buddhist book, and I really went, oh, this is the same as all the other books. And I really quite enjoyed just understanding that all you have to do is just follow these simple steps. So it's good that you're using that to teach children in an indirect way. I think that's really good. So thank you again.
That's right. You do a lot of meditation, don't you?
Yes, I do. I just sort of incorporated in my... I do meditation to sort of help people. Look, I had anxiety, and that's the reason why I'm a therapist. But for me, it's meditation that made me feel better. And so I sort of try and teach people that it's like brushing your teeth, right? We do that so we don't go to the dentist. You have to find something that's going to help you not to have mental health problems. Because I think people think it's going to happen by itself. But like you said throughout this whole podcast, the world's different now. It's faster. And if you're not prepared, those people will suffer.
It's so easy to become overwhelmed. I know I get overwhelmed and I have to stop and remember. So I now have a daily practice of meditation. It's only about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But
I do 2 hours, 2 hours a day.
I want to work up to that, because it's like suddenly you can go, what's more important, checking Facebook or actually just focusing on the quiet, less anxious aspect of the inner world?
Yeah.
I'm going to find more answers to my life by going in here than I will by...
You should do a meditation. Have you done a meditation one for kids?
No, not yet. That could be the next one.
Yeah, I think that a mindfulness one, because I think, if you could just take one thing away that you can add it, meditation isn't about a feeling, right, that a lot of people think. So a lot of people will say, it didn't work, I didn't like it, I was thinking too much. Meditation is about a discipline. So there are going to be days that you are really, really into it and other days that you're not. But the joy of that is by sitting through it, in the real world, you are able to be the same person through good or bad times, right?
Yes.
And that's the thing that I think kids need to learn.
Yes, it's that leveling out.
There's no problems. It just is your perception of the problem, know?
Yeah.
So if you see it as bad, of course it's going to be bad, but not I don't think anything's bad.
No, and that's one of the things is that the important thing of both the program and my book, one of the Being Yours Enough book, the first thing I talk about is being self-aware, noticing your inner monologue, and creating the space to notice it.
Yes.
So you're not your identity and your inner monologue in your body are not all fused into one. You can actually start to separate them out. So you, with your presence, can notice your monologue.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Go, oh, that's what I'm thinking. Wow, is that beneficial? No, it's not. Okay, can I change it? Yes, I can. That's starting that process.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to maybe having you on the show again when that comes out.
I'd love to.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Josh. And I'll put all of your information down below so everyone can have all the context to contact you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you. All right, you've been listening to the Secret Men's Business podcast, and the podcast is out every Monday, so don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you get to find out all the new episodes that are coming out. Now, we've got nearly 200 episodes, so go back and listen to some of them, and we will see you next week. Have a good week, everyone. Bye.